Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brand 2020. Today is July 4th, 2017. Japan, and Tokyo in particular, is a really marvelous place. And the reason why living in Japan or things that are Japanese are so marvelous is because there's a context there that sometimes it hits you kind of counterintuitively about how the Japanese might act or react to a certain situation. I'm joined by my doctor of persuasion, Dr. Nancy Snow. Hello,
Hi.
Dr. Snow.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy birthday to the United States, yes. 241 years old.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Never looked a day over 240.
Right. Nancy, this thing with the Japanese and their love-hate relationship with tourists, with the number of tourists exceeding 4 million a year now, and it's probably going to be even more than that next year, it seems to be reaching a maximum point.
Yeah, and I don't know where the end point is here because I go from Tokyo to Kyoto. And Kyoto has been dealing with this influx of foreign visitors as the ancient cultural capital and also with the sort of the vision of the geisha on every corner. And recently the Asahi Shimbun talked about pollution tourism, I think was the quote in an article, that the foreign tourists, as you know, whether it's Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, the main three, they concentrate in the touristy areas, but these are also places where regular commerce is taking place. People want to just get across the sidewalk. So in Kyoto, they illuminate the sakura along the river there. And this year, after 27 years, the head of the committee, he's 70 years old, he said, we didn't want to attract all the foreign tourists. So we decided we were not going to illuminate the cherry blossoms. Well, that then has this multiplier effect because the locals,
what's going on?
They lose out
That's
too.
Right.
And who can they blame? The scapegoat then becomes the foreign visitor, the foreign tourist. So the government has to figure out, I mean, you want to welcome people. This is great for Japan. And Japan is a place that makes a very good and strong first impression.
Right.
So how can you kind of control the carrying capacity? Because you don't want to suddenly say, well, we don't want you now. We've seen the weakening of the yen, which has brought in a lot of tourists, especially from the area. I guess the overwhelming number is now the Chinese tourists.
Right. And they come to buy, too.
They come to buy, but as you say, it's a love-hate. It's sort of like, be careful what you wish for, because they're here, and they're going to keep coming.
But, you know, people who know Japanese in foreign countries, you go to school with them or their neighbors or something like that, everybody's taken about how kind and gentle they are. And they're just known nationally as just a really generous kind of people. So this aversion for the foreigners must be founded in something that's really, really hard. I mean, it must be just too burdensome for them to say, you know, I like you guys, but I like you over there, not over here.
Yeah, I think that the answer might be just better planning because in Kyoto, they don't have the conference sites, they don't have the hotels available. So you've got sort of the Airbnb aspect taking place. And I think with this fellow with the Illumination Committee, he was saying the government really isn't listening to us because they keep saying, gosh, by 2020, 40 million across Japan. By 2050 could be 60 million. There's just no end in sight.
You go to Kyoto, weekly now, right?
Yeah.
It really is a beautiful city. It's something that's just it's so magical.
Right.
They've taken the telephone lines and they've put them all underground. So it does have this feel to it, this old feel, and the same footprints of all of the buildings have pretty much remained the same over, 200, 300, 400 years. So they might have renovated it somewhat, but a lot of the old city still is there. And it is an attractive, I mean, for people who like Japan, almost everybody, when they come here, they definitely want to put Kyoto on their list.
Well, think about it. Kyoto is a place where people live, and then you have, say, the Gion district where the tourists go, or you go to see the machiya, the traditional Japanese homes. And some of the people living in these homes are now dealing with foreign tourists who come. They want a beautiful wedding setting, and they take pictures in front of their home. And the residents are saying, please, no more. I mean, they just want to live their lives. So the part where I live, close to the university, is not the tourist section. So I just go there, and it's a pleasant sort of break from Tokyo, which is much more frenetic and energetic. But in Kyoto, if I were to go to the hot spots where the tourists are, I might feel the way some of the locals do.
I would imagine.
So I don't know how they're going to accommodate this because...
Well, the sidewalks aren't very wide there either. I mean, they haven't built this to accommodate this kind of influx either.
Right. And you see that in Tokyo. You go to certain neighborhoods where the tourists go, and there really isn't. It's hard to kind of work your way through. When I end up at the station, the Kyoto station, it's hard getting to the taxi. Sometimes there are very long lines. I mean, this is not a terrible problem to have.
Right.
But I just think about Kyoto as this having, I think, the highest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. It's a place in many respects that I think should be for contemplation, going to the temples and enjoying yourself, the fall foliage, but they never stop coming. So
follow the person with the flag. This way, please.
Right, and so that's sort of automated. That's the type of tourism that I think can be a little bit too much for people. So I don't know really how we're going to resolve this, but in a way, it's a good problem for Japan to have because, by and large, as I said, I go back, and you made the point too that people are so accommodating. They try so hard. Even if the English is lacking, there's that giri, that sense of sort of duty to help somebody in need. And they know that many of these tourists coming don't speak Japanese.
And
so
sometimes it's just amazing how far out of their way they will go. I mean, you've relayed many stories that you've had of people going out of their way, and they're taking you all the way down the train line and an hour and a half out of their way, and you thought that they're on a travel, and they said, no, I was just helping you.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because on Quora, online, you can pose a question, and there's a question about only in Japan, and they get into thread after thread of people who lived here, may have left Japan, but they look back fondly, and they talk about that experience of the first time, and sometimes it's a half an hour, or a lady hopped in a taxi with someone to get them to their hotel. I don't know of any other place that would be so accommodating. But I do wonder, though, Tim, if that might change over time with that sort of tourist fatigue, or what we would call compassion fatigue.
Right.
But when you hear words like pollution tourism, that's sort of filtering out there now.
Well, you're familiar with the Mario go-karts here in Tokyo, right?
Right.
And there is a little bit of something of the foreigners kind of thumbing their nose at, being in Japan and getting away with murder and, kind of letting it hang out when in fact you're not really supposed to let it hang out. I mean, you can in a certain way, but the Mario go-karts, it's really noticeable. It's a kind of a spectacle, but only the foreigners seem to be able to get away with it.
Right. I don't know how they came about. When I see them, I thought it was a promotion. So I don't know how or when
somebody's
they
making
originated.
some money from it.
Yeah, they are.
Right.
But has it become any kind of hazard? Because it's sort of fun if you're here for the first time and you see the go-karts go by in this
and they're in
metro
the lane
area.
of traffic for the cars. And the reason they get away with it is because these go-karts are qualified as bicycles.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes.
Well, this
That
is
makes
good
sense,
to
doesn't
know
it?
because I've been riding a bike, but now I can ride a go-kart around the city.
You just have to wear a funny outfit.
All right. I tend to, just to begin with, if you see my pants.
No, I think you look great.
Thank you. So anyway, we can't resolve this sort of rise in the foreign tourists.
Right.
But overall, I think it helps the economy. But I just, like any other place, I've lived in many places like Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles and been to New York City a lot where they can sort of absorb it. But I think Tokyo can absorb it well. But Kyoto just doesn't, they haven't really set themselves up for this.
And it really is a small, compact city, too. I mean, when you travel into Kyoto, it's just surrounded by low hills, and it's just in this basin, and you can see it from one of the hillsides. You can capture the whole city.
And one other thing, too, that it might be shocking for some of our viewers to hear, is that back in 2003, I first came here very briefly in 93, so 10 years later, there were 5 million foreign visitors in Japan for the year. 5 million. Okay, so we're getting used to now numbers of 20 million, 24 million, now going toward 30 million, 40 million. that wasn't that long ago.
Sure.
14 years ago.
No, you're right. I think
So-
they don't have the experience,
Yeah.
this interaction and this acceptance. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but when I first came to Japan to go to school in Sendai, people would actually have to go to the chiropractor having turned their heads so quickly to see this foreigner. I mean, up north in Sendai, of course, but, you know, it was a time when seeing a foreigner or touching a foreigner or seeing different color hair than black was a startling spectacle on the regular streets.
Right, and I think now it would be less so, but
Right.
and you're also supposed to be very polite about not staring at people. But remember when we talked one time about the foreigners on the train going to the airport,
Right,
and
with
they
the
got,
luggage.
yeah, with the luggage, and they got a little loud, and then one of the operators of the train was sort of
Right.
reporting them. So you wonder if there are going to be these incidents now of just that image on the one hand that I think the Japanese are well aware of because foreigners comment
Right.
on it. How polite, how
Right.
accommodating. But when you
It's maybe a
reach kind
tipping
of the
point.
end of the line and the end of the rope and you say, okay, no more.
Wasabi Wars?
Yes,
Remember that?
yes,
That's right.
Wasabi Wars. So
Right.
perhaps we're going to see this more
Well, I
trickling
think the
out.
Tokyo metropolitan government is really putting a lot of effort into arranging tours for 2 hours or maybe 3 hours
Sure.
out of town. You took the Shinkansen, and
That's
then
right.
you went into one of the far outreaches where people normally wouldn't go unless there was an attractive tour that was already set up, and you had the bento lunches and everything was kind of taken care of for you so that you could have a really rural experience.
Well, I hope there'll be more of those and also put more emphasis on eco or ecotourism because there are places like Mie where, you know, I've been there a number of times, or up north to Sendai and Tohoku, or go to Hokkaido or Fukui, Fukuoka. Just wonderful places out of town, and maybe there are going to be some startup companies that will be able to take these visitors in
Right.
and really give them an authentic Japanese experience, because Japan is a place that for many people it may be once in a lifetime.
Right.
And they have to really think this through so that you don't have just someone going to Kyoto in August and just being overwhelmed and saying never again.
Right. Tourism in Japan is a success, but it does come with a little bit of baggage. Please stay tuned to this issue. We're going to continue to follow it because it's not over yet.